What I want to talk about today is Debian and new hardware. 1 month and a half, I guess, something like 45, 50 days ago, I got a new computer. A completely new computer with new hardware. And of course, I knew that Debian isn't great with new hardware, but I thought, what the hell, I'll try and see if that's still manageable. That's what I thought, right? But boy, was I wrong. It was really difficult to get Debian working with my new computer. So let's take a look at it. So first I want to talk to you about what did I get. It was in March of this year. So I got AMD Ryzen 999 00X with Arctic Liquid Freezer 3, Gigabyte X 870 gaming motherboard, Asus RX 7800 XT graphic card, Corsair Vengeance 32 gigabytes of RAM, Langcool 207 case, Corsair, and then my monitor Gigabyte M27Q. This is a new machine, right? My old machine was AMD Ryzen 5 with some X470F gaming, and I had Gigabyte Radeon RX 6700 XT Eagle 12 gigabyte graphic card. Actually, since then I sold it, and now I have Asus Radeon RX 580 instead in this my old machine that I use today as a testing machine, I guess, secondary machine. And I used to use and have Debian on my old computer, and it just worked fabulously, right? So let's take a look at my Linux experience, right? So I started using Linux full-time September 2019, and I started with Linux Mint. It was super easy, and it's something that I've known for many years. Mind you, I am a friend of Linux since 2003 and 4, since Fedora Core 1 and the first Ubuntu. So I would always check out Linux since then. I remember even the first CDs Canonical sent out to people. I would receive those. Regretfully, I can't find them, so I don't know if I really have them. Probably not anymore. Anyway, I know Linux for what, more than 20 years now, right? But full time, I've been using Linux since September 2019, and I used Linux Mint for a year, about a year, right? Then I wanted to try something else, so I actually installed Ubuntu Mate in September 2020, and I used it for almost a year. In that period, I also tried Ubuntu, the flagship, right, with the GNOME. And then in December 2021, I wanted to go to the source of all of these distros, right? Both Linux Mint and Ubuntu, they're based on Debian. So I really wanted to challenge myself and see how would that work, right? So I installed Debian December 2021, and I've been actually Debian user since then. Now is May 2025, so I used Debian for almost 4 years. That would be in December, right? There is a little asterisk here by Debian. It's because for a few months I would actually install and use Dev1. Dev1 is a distribution that is based on Debian, but it doesn't use systemd. You can actually choose between three on Dev1. It's init sys 5 init, run it, and OpenRC, believe, which is great. I really like Dev1. but primarily because it's based on Debian. Debian is just fantastic. So I've been using Debian since then, right? So I have quite an experience with Debian and Ubuntu and Linux Mint. And then I got a new computer in March of this year. And of course, as I said, I knew that there will be a challenge getting Debian on that new hardware. But I couldn't dream that it would be such a struggle for me, right? So it is really a struggle. If you're a Debian user, definitely, right? And you have a new hardware. This is where I found myself, right? So what did I do? First, initially, I tried to install one of those Debian testing ISOs. It just didn't work. My graphic card maybe worked, but I had major issues with my Ethernet cards, network cards, including wireless. So what did I do? I tried Fedora. I think I installed KDE, and it was actually quite a good experience, right? But it was KDE. I'm not a huge fan of KDE. I always thought of KDE as a candy. And so after Fedora, I wanted to try OpenSUSE. OpenSUSE has a new software, and I'm talking about OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. It's a rolling release. They also have a Leap, which is more like Debian. Anyway, I installed OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, and it recognized actually all of my software in the new computer. However, I just didn't like OpenSUSE, the way it works, the way it's built. It seems like over-engineered, weird codes and commands that you need to use. It's nothing, not even close to Debian, right? I know it uses RPM packages, and I just didn't like OpenSUSE. Then I even tried Linux Mint just to see if it recognizes my hardware, and it actually did, except the wireless card. But otherwise it did recognize the hardware. I also tried Endeavour OS at this point, because why not? It's Arch based and it worked fine actually. I really like Endeavour OS. I'm just not rolling release guy. So that was fine. And then, my frustration with being basically OS homeless got larger and bigger, right? And then at this point I didn't know what I'm doing. So I installed Ubuntu with the GNOME, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that the way Ubuntu integrates GNOME is really nice and pleasant, right? One thing about GNOME, at least vanilla, is I don't like is that it's really restrictive. Reminds me of Apple's operating system. And just one thing that really, really makes me angry basically is that you can't have any files and folders on your desktop, right? I mean, just look at, for instance, here. I'm using XFCE here, and I can just create whatever I want here, right? Folder, test, boom, it's there. In vanilla GNOME, nope. But Ubuntu actually does it really nicely. That part, it really does. It's so nice. But Ubuntu, it was GNOME, and then I wanted to try something else while I'm at it, right? So I installed White Linux, something that I explored like 5 years ago, and I really like Void's simplicity. People say that it resembles BSD, and I guess they're right. But I really like the way it's built. I really like XBPS package manager. And Void is not based on anything. It's independent, and it doesn't use systemd. Actually uses runit in its system. So I ran Void Linux for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, I guess. And then I ran into some issues, and this is basically my problem. I'm not an expert in Linux, right? even though I've been using it actually full time now for 5 years and 6 months or so. I'm not an expert, and I dreaded that moment when I had to really, well, I would get a problem and I would have to really solve that issue, right? So it was every single moment something could happen, and then what, right? So I decided, damn, I need to figure out how to get Debian working at this moment, even though I know that Debian Trixie is still not out, not officially. I tried already, right? Different aspects of it. So I tried Debian. I haven't tried Dev1, but they both failed me beyond any recognition. Why? First, Debian testing ISOs. They're basically testing ground for Debian's installer, not testing Trixie ISOs as such, right? It's primarily focusing on installer. And what did that mean? It meant that I would get a lot of errors during installation. One common error was that I wouldn't get proper user permissions, right? And it was just consequent, at least while trying to install, for instance, XFCE. I did try Debian GNOME testing, and it worked somewhat nicely. But again, GNOME. I tried even Dev1, XFCE, but since it's based on Debian, I had the same issue. So I really felt like an OS refugee and homeless person, right? Because Trixie doesn't recognize any of my Ethernet cards and wireless card. So what did I do? I had to buy an USB Ethernet card. It was actually the one called TP-Link UE306 version 1. And after that, Debian could actually see my Ethernet card. The one where I installed GNOME, that was fine, as I said, but only after some tweaks and changes that I made, and absolutely I had to use some extensions. The ones that I really needed to use was Dash to Dock, Desktop Icon, Tray Icons Reloaded, and Just Perfection, for instance, right? But it was nice after that. But I had that itch. I wanted to get my Debian, and my Debian runs XFCE. And before that, I even tried Cinnamon. Cinnamon is actually that the desktop environment that I ran the most on Linux. It was fine. I had some issues, right? I mean, it's still testing. So I really wanted XFCE. This is where I feel at home, right? So it was like, okay, this is damn last try for now. I need to get Debian. If I don't get Debian, I will have to get something else that runs okay on my machine. And I don't care if it was Linux Mint, the new one that is coming soon, or if it's Ubuntu or Fedora, right? Or even Arch. So I tried Debian Trixie with XFCE. Instead of downloading those daily and weekly ISOs, I actually downloaded Alpha 1. I think it's from December 2024, so it was pretty old ISO, but I just didn't care. I just wanted to avoid having different problems with it. So I installed it on my machine, and guess what? I got the same freaking problem with user permissions. But I actually managed to pass by it, and Debian testing actually couldn't see my Ethernet card nor my wireless card, but it could see the one that I bought, right? The USB Ethernet card, so I could install it. So next thing I did was installing Licorice kernel, this one here. It works fine. So at the moment I'm actually running 6.14.6 Licorice kernel, and it's functioning pretty good. It sees all my hardware, recognize it, and at the moment it runs as it should. So I really like it. As you can see here, Debian Trixie. Waiting for final release of Debian 13, codenamed Trixie. Should be released in a few months during this summer 2025. This is where I am right now, right? After buying new computer, I thought that I would be able to somehow get Debian at least testing, right? I knew that Debian 12 Bookworm wouldn't probably run on this completely new hardware, but I thought that testing was fairly ahead. Then I figured out it wasn't, because Debian testing, I think it runs on 6.12 kernel, and for my hardware to work I needed at least 6.13, if not 14 even, at least for my Ethernet card. So that was it. So I really struggled to get some proper OS on my new machine, but eventually I did make it, and yeah, now I'm running Debian again with XFCE, and I am more than happy, really. Well, after 1 month and 15 days of pain on new hardware, I'm finally here with Debian again running, right? So I guess what this struggle taught me is that there are some good Linux options out there, but it isn't easy, at least not for me. I also figured out that I really, really like Debian, and I tried OpenSUSE, it was not for me. Fedora, if Debian vanished, I guess I could use Fedora. Linux Mint, definitely. I mean, I was so close getting back to Linux Mint. That would probably be nice choice, as always. This is how I started my full-time usage of Linux. It was with Linux Mint, and I remember it is a great distro, and I confirmed that once again. Otherwise, Endeavour OS was also a very good option, absolutely. So it doesn't really matter what distro you're running. That's something that people usually say, and I do agree to some extent, but package manager is probably the most important thing in Linux world, right? If you like packaging manager, then you are good to go, most likely, right? And of course that the OS runs well on your hardware. This is really something that is very important. So this is first time I experienced this with new hardware and running Linux, so it's not easy, specifically if you're on Debian, right? Debian is really good for older hardware, servers, and of course desktops, but not a new hardware. So yeah, that's my take on this topic of Debian and running it on new hardware.